Hey, welcome into Husker247 Daily. I'm Mike Schaefer, joined by Brian Christopherson here on Tuesday morning. Matt Rhule, Nebraska's head coach, met with the media on Monday, as he does every Monday at his press conference, ran through a litany of topics, walked through Nebraska's trip out to Maryland. They're heading out on a Thursday, a little bit unique. Most teams fly out Fridays, but with the distance having to be covered, Nebraska went out there a little bit earlier. Brian, did you enjoy Matt Rhule getting all into his OCD more or less as it relates to logistics and kind of his compulsive need to be in charge of everything?
Yeah, it's good to have one person like that in your travel group at least, though. Is that Brunts for us?
That's front for us. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I think Brunts thinks if he let me get, he probably wonders how I'll make it to Maryland, like without his assistance, because I seem like
I
I'm
went with you last time. You did perfectly fine.
yeah, I'm a
You
big
know?
boy. I do seem like kind of hapless, but I think I step it up a notch when it's like I got to go hunt for myself and get my own food,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. But yeah, it is good to have someone who's a little anal in the group,
I,
and it sounds like rules like that.
I think Brunts is just on edge ever since the first time I was sent out to go cover a road game because he was unable to make it. He had a wedding, and I bought tickets to go to Los Angeles, and I was going out for a week because I was doing recruiting stuff out there too. When Nebraska played UCLA in 2012, the problem was I bought him for the wrong week, and so Runts Runts was I think ever since then I blew it on the first opportunity, and then he's just been on edge ever since
Yeah.
then. So I've had no issues, no travel concerns since then. That got rectified right away. I made the mistake. I recognized the mistake. The airline company at that time was willing to work with me, and we just switched it to a week ahead. No problem, no extra fees. But I think it just scarred Brunts for life, and so I think my sins have been passed down onto you. So I
Yeah.
apologize for
No,
that.
that's all right. I need all the help I can get. So yeah. But this week I'm flying solo, so I'll try to get my way to the stadium by 3:30 Eastern.
Yeah, well, Nebraska, like I said, they'll be there on Thursday. They're going to have some team bonding on Friday. I'm sure they'll go to the Washington Monument together. And BC and I did this last time that Nebraska played Maryland. We
Mhm.
just got up in the morning and went through what is it, National Mall, I believe it's called, and
Yeah.
it's kind of a honestly pretty nice. Like if you're over in that area and you can just go walk around that every day, that wouldn't be too bad. I'd be okay with that.
Yeah,
I don't
we
know. There's a lot of other reasons I wouldn't want to live in DC, but that seems like it would be one of the perks.
Yeah, we enjoyed it. You found a good food spot afterward. Kind of an old school campus. Felt like kind of older buildings to me. Stadium's like in the campus, if I remember
Yeah.
right. It's like right in the middle of it.
When the campus is really undulated, and so it's sort of a kind of a unique setup all the way around at College Park. So if you're going out there, have a great time. I thought it was pretty cool. I'm curious
Yeah.
what that crowd ultimately is going to look like. All right, let's transition this from random College Park and bad travel stories to potentially a bad running game. Matt Rhule doesn't think so. More from Matt Rhule on Nebraska's running game on Monday. What did he have to say?
Yeah, they're 101st in the country in rushing. Now in college stats, as you know, the sacks count as part of that. So Nebraska in the last, 2 weeks have lost more than 100 yards, I think, off 12 sacks. And then there was the bad snap, which I don't even think counted as a sack. It was counted as a team loss where they lost another 20 or so. So that is part of the discussion here because Nebraska ended up with like 67 rushing yards, but obviously they had more than that with the true running game. Rule's point, and you can go back and forth with this, is he says right now Emmett is third in the league in rushing. So the narrative that's out there that we can't run the football is kind of silly. College football, you take away the sacks, are we giving up too many sacks? Yes. But he said it's like not, oh my gosh, we can't block anybody. I think that's true to a point. I do think they need to solidify that run game more. And I actually thought early in the game on Saturday, Schaefer, they had it working a little bit off the jump. And it kind of disappeared in that discombobulated second quarter, and then it popped back at the very end. Like if you think of Emmett's yards, he had 80 some rushing, but he had 30 on those two plays after
Yep.
the Ja'Cory Barney touchdown, And then he had about 20 or so on that last possession after Lenhart had the sack. So about 50 were there. Now those count. I'm not knocking those away. Those were big plays. But I get, maybe that's the argument. Like they could have stuck with that and tried to make that more of a drum beat in that second quarter when things were getting a little chaotic. But
yeah, there was like a stretch there where Emmett scores, he has those 30 yards, a 23-yard touchdown run, and then they didn't like go back to him for 12 plays. Like it was, and you don't know if that's because they saw something where the passing look was going to give them such a great opportunity. And obviously inside that stretch, I think you had the touchdown for Isaiah Hunter, you had the field goal that came out of it, but there's also an element of it too, where are they just not running with Emmett because they need to keep him fresh because they don't have anything behind it? Like there's a lot with Nebraska's running game that it's open for interpretation. And I understand what Matt Rhule means about sacks. I don't care what their end of the game running numbers are. I care whether I think Nebraska can just line up and run for a first down when it's 3rd and 3, and they need to be able to do that. I don't know that they feel like they can. I don't know that Nebraska feels like when the field gets small that they have any kind of advantage running the football. And so we can laud Emmett Johnson's numbers for the season. He's had a nice year. I am a little dubious that that's going to maintain throughout the rest of Big Ten play. I think there's a lot of Akron doing some work there for what he's done this season.
Yeah, I'd give it like a C grade with just a standard running game. I think you're absolutely right, though. Like when it's not a group that at this point you feel really confident about when they get, especially in the deep red, that they can move people down there and run it in. Now they did have a great play on the first play, first touchdown. That was a clever play. Yeah, that was great with Harburg. Basically QB lead blocking for Emmett. So stuff like that. Maybe there's some innovative ways you can kind of find your way into the end zone there. All in all, it was strange because the O-line was getting toasted by most people. I don't think you're a big PFF guy, but then the PFF grades gave like Pritchett and Gatula the highest grades of anybody. And I think on Sunday, people are.
I thought Gatula actually played pretty well. Like
yeah.
I think their pressure issue is more a handful of plays from Pritchett, who outside of like 2 very obvious busts, I thought played reasonably well too. So I'm not like shocked by that.
Yeah.
But it's I don't know. I don't know what to make of Nebraska's offensive line issues week in and week out.
Yeah, I do think there's a mixture, and we're getting away from the running game a little bit, but I do think the ball came out late sometimes. I mean, I think it's just a fact. It was held on to like 4 seconds on some of those sacks. Some of there were times when guys were not open. That's definitely true. I think Rhule had an interesting comment. Like sometimes you take the sack on, he'd rather a sack on 3rd down actually than 1st or 2nd. Because you're going to punt it anyway. And I think he's getting to the point, like, you just don't want to do something stupid if the play's already blown up, basically. There were a couple of those, but the O-line's got to tick it up a notch still, I think. And it's interesting. They've kind of, we're supposed to be a strength, and you're a little worried where it's stuck in neutral or going down a little bit. And then the D-line, the group that we had question marks about all the bye week, they're the one that had a good game Saturday that was encouraging, and so that it's interesting how the narratives flip from week to week.
Yeah, well, and that I think should tell us more than anything. We don't have to make sweeping referendums from week to week either, but I don't know that we're going to learn that lesson. I'm not sure that we've learned it recently. I don't know that we're going to learn it in the future, and myself included. I'm just as guilty as everyone else. I am not casting stones here. So, I think Nebraska's running game is okay. I think a C is a completely reasonable grade. I think Emmett has been what you would hope that Emmett would be. I am curious how Dana Holgorsen chooses to call things. You got another good front 7 here with Maryland coming up. They're a havoc-inducing defense. They get after you. They force sacks. They force tackles for a loss. They force turnovers. How does Nebraska choose to play that? Are they going to try to spread them out? You try to pack it in? I think there's a real cat and mouse element to how Dana Holgorsen calls this game that sort of fascinates me. And I would anticipate Emmett is going to be a really important part of this. whether it is as a pass catcher or as a traditional, just what you know it is, a guy to turn around and take the snap from the quarterback.
Yeah, and they need a game. They need a game where it's like 75 snaps on offense. Like that was part of the thing, and they were their own worst enemy in some of those drives. So you got to point the thumb in old Pelini speak. But they only had 55 plays. And so it's one of those games where you can walk out of it and be like, oh, they only fed Mosey 3 times. And I do think if they had 15 or 20 more snaps, he would have been like at 6 or 7 touches. Maybe if you get to that category, Dane Key gets a couple catches, and we're not talking about him get shut out. So I think it would really help this offense and sort of the mojo going into the rest of October, obviously, because it would help them win the game. But also if they have one of those days where you get that many plays, the ball gets spread around to a couple of those guys a little bit more, and everybody's sort of got some juice coming out of a win in Maryland. If you could combine those worlds, that would be big for the rest of the month.
Yeah, especially with the short trip to Minnesota coming later that week on a Friday. I mean, to have some increased confidence going into a place where you haven't played well historically. And again, it has nothing to do really with Matt Rhule, though they did lose there in 2023. Just having that would make them feel better going into that Friday game. All right, Brian, that concludes it for today for Husker 24/7 Daily. We set out to talk about the run game, and instead we kind of touched on everything with Nebraska's offense, because that's just sort of how this works. You can't talk about the run without talking about the line. You can't talk about the run without talking about plays and total plays being run. You can't talk about the run without needing to talk about the pass, and that has to be opened up, or play calling. It all builds on each other. And just like that, those things all have to be better for Nebraska's running game to be better as well. So for Brian Christopherson, I'm Mike Schaefer. We're Husker 24/7. Get to Husker247.com. Plenty of coverage leading up to this Maryland game. Plenty of stuff going on here. And we've got you covered over at Husker247.com.